Welcome to the Author Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Author Your Life. And today we're going to talk about the 3 people that are in your relationship. Now, don't worry, that doesn't mean that your partner is cheating on you. But what is important to grasp is that a relationship is more than one dynamic. Really, really key here. A relationship is more than one dynamic. So what do I mean by this? Who are the 3 people in the relationship? Okay, the first person in any relationship. Now here, when I'm using the word relationship, I'm suggesting romantic relationships, but as always, any principle that applies to a romantic relationship is generally also good for a non-romantic relationship. Just that romantic relationships, because of their deeper level of intimacy and connection, good principles of a relationship are more exaggerated in a romantic relationship. Doesn't mean that they don't necessarily apply to a friendship or a work relationship. But let's look at our romantic relationships here. The first person that you've got to please in a romantic relationship is the I. I is the first person in a relationship. And I means you. You've got to look after yourself in a relationship. You have certain needs, certain requirements, and these need to be fulfilled and respected in a relationship. So you've got to do you. You've got to do the things that make you tick. So if you've got certain activities, certain hobbies that you enjoy doing just for you and just by yourself, then you need to honor that. You need to devote time to those things. Don't sacrifice what you enjoy. Don't sacrifice your self-care for the other person in a relationship, because that ceases to be a relationship. That's dependency. That's where you start to rely on the other person for your enjoyment, your satisfaction, your productivity, your fulfillment in life. And that's not a good dynamic to have. So the first person you've got to look after in every single relationship is the I. Because ultimately, you can't rely on anyone else to do it for you. Even the love of your life isn't going to look after you as well as you can look after you, because you are the person who knows you best. You know what you need to do in order to be a happy, fulfilled person. So that's the first dynamic, is the I. Now the second dynamic in a relationship is the you. Now the you is the other person. Because when you live in a relationship where it's just all about the I, that also creates a relationship of dependency, where the other person is dependent on you, and that's not good either. Or alternatively, it creates a relationship of independence. If you have 2 people who are operating from I coming together, there is no link. They're 2 separate people in the relationship. There's no joining and merging of the 2, and that's not good either. It's not good to live in a dependent relationship, but it's also not good to live in an independent relationship. So in a relationship, it's not just about the I, it's not just about you, the person you, it's also about the other person, the other you. So this is where we make concessions. This is where we make sacrifices. This is where we make time for the other person. Because you know what? Sometimes, yeah, they're going to want to do something that isn't particularly up your street. Yeah, they're going to have a perspective or an opinion that you don't wholeheartedly agree with. But you need to honor and respect that person's right to want to do those things, to have that particular perspective. That's something that you need to nourish and cultivate. Is to appreciate where the other person is coming from, where the other you is coming from. And also, here's where our terminology starts to get really mixed up and confused. You've also got to let the you do their I. I'll say that again. You've got to let the you do their I. So just as you have certain things that you like to do, just as you have certain self-care principles that you need to stick to, you also have to respect the other person's needs to fulfill their particular I. They'll have stuff that they want to do, and you've got to let them go off and do that by themselves. They'll have particular self-care rituals that they like to do. You need to give them the space to allow them to do that. So this can go to quite big constructs. So for example, if there's a project or a passion that you have and you need to go away for a couple of weeks to work on that, then that's what you need to do. That's a really important part of the I. But also, if the other person wants to do some traveling, or they want to go somewhere, or there's a particular project that they need to work on and they need to go away for a couple of weeks, then you need to honor that as well, because that's the you. That's allowing them to have what they need and allow them to progress further on their particular path in life. So that's two dynamics we've described so far. There's the I and the you. And this is where a lot of people stop, because they see that a relationship is two people, so they think, right, there's what's got to be done for me in the relationship, the I, and there's what's got to be done for them, the you, in the relationship. But there's an extra dynamic. The extra dynamic, the third dynamic, is the us. Because there's one person in the relationship, there's another person in the relationship, but through the very definition of talking about the relationship, there is a link between the two. There is the connection, there is the us, there is the relationship. That's why it's called a relationship. There's two parties and they come together in the relationship. And this is something else that you've also got to look after. You've got to look after the us. So again, I'm going to talk mainly about romantic relationships here, but some of what we're talking about will apply to friendships. In a romantic relationship, you have certain values and standards of the relationship. You have expectations of each other. What kind of qualities you aim to live to, what kind of lifestyle you aim to create together, what kind of activities and pursuits that you embark on together as an us. You have dreams, hopes, aspirations. What kind of lifestyle do you want to live individually and collectively? What type of career success do you want individually and collectively? What type of family life do you want individually and collectively? This is something you've got to have a serious conversation about, because a lot of people, when they're living in these independent relationships, they're not thinking enough about the us. They're kind of assuming that their goals and dreams are the other person's goals and dreams, or that their goals and dreams are more important than the other person's goals and dreams. That is not a healthy relationship. We've talked about dependent relationships, one person depending on the other. That's not good. We've talked about independent relationships, where you've got two separate parts who aren't communicating with each other, who aren't properly linked. That's not good either. The type of relationship that you want to aim for is an interdependent relationship. An interdependent relationship is where the I, the you, and the us are all satisfied sufficiently. Where you are two separate parts, absolutely, but the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Together you can do more than what you can do separately. So yes, you have your own unique personality and your own unique needs, but you can also come together and create something better together in a relationship. And a very real and obvious manifestation of this is a child. If you're in a romantic relationship and you have a child together, that is two parts coming together and creating a whole. Now obviously that doesn't apply to friendships and work relationships, but the principle of it applies. In those relationships too, just like a romantic relationship, there are these three dynamics: the I, the you, and the us. And for a healthy and functioning relationship, all three of those dynamics need to be nurtured and cared for. And what a lot of people are getting wrong in relationships is they're slipping up on one of those points. They're either being a sucker and a martyr and not looking after the I. They're either being selfish and inconsiderate and not looking after the you, or they're being independent and close-minded and not thinking about the us. So if you want any relationship to be successful, you need to satisfy those three dynamics: the I, the you, and the us. So is that something you're going to be able to do? If you look at your current important relationships, your romantic relationship being the most obvious one, but also think about relationships with your family members, with your friends, with your work colleagues, and even perhaps your clients and customers as well. This is a dynamic that applies there too. Thinking of those relationships, are you satisfying those three dynamics? If you are, there's a good chance that's going to be a good relationship. If you're not, there's an even greater chance that it's not going to be such a good relationship. So folks, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson that I've shared with you today. I look forward to sharing more with you, as always. But until then, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story. I'll speak to you soon. David. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be, because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.